Thank you very much. So, on the very first trip I took to Helms Deep, well, even before I went to Helms Deep Cave, Hal Love and Jonathan Cover had told me that they thought there were bone deposits in the cave, some of which they suspected might be human. And then Kristen and Jim Honecker and I went in the cave in May of 2021. I saw 3 bone deposits. 2 of them I was pretty sure were human. One of them I thought was probably not human. I was totally wrong. But being a state employee and unfortunately knowing what the law is in the state of Tennessee, this required me to notify the authorities. I did not really want to immediately call them myself. I did not know them. They did not know me. But I have a friend, a forensic anthropologist with Tennessee connections, P. Willie. Dr. P. Willie went to UT. Now he's at Cal State Chico, and he founded the forensic anthropology department there at Cal State. And I talked to him. I sent him some pictures. And I said, what should I do? And he said, well, obviously the law requires you to contact the medical examiner. And he said, do you mind if I reach out to a friend of mine, Dr. Hugh Berryman? And I had heard of Dr. Berryman from work he had done, another paper I had read on a person who had, I think, a projectile point stuck in there and a bone, that was found in a cave. And so I said, no, you don't have to ask my permission. Please contact Dr. Berryman. And so P did. Hugh, who is here today, knew the medical examiner for Perry County, Dr. Stephen Averett, and through him we were able to notify the appropriate authorities, and in fact then we set up a trip with the medical examiner's office. Now, there are human remains in the cave. They are sensitive, and they are one of the reasons the cave does require a gate. Like Jim, I don't love gates, but sometimes they need them, and this is one of those situations. So without further ado, we're going to be talking about the prehistoric human skeletons in Helms Deep Cave. This is by Tiffany Saul, although she's married now, Tiffany Fracia, P. Willie, and of course Hugh Berryman. So Dr. Berryman.
So all 3 of us are forensic anthropologists, and I've been, he and I go back a long ways. We were in graduate school together at UT Knoxville and have stayed and communicated, very close friends ever since college days.
Dr. Berryman, you're going to have to really talk up so they can hear you.
Can you hear me back in the back? No. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Well, I don't know if I can talk this loud through the whole thing, but we'll see. All right. But we are forensic anthropologists. That's what we do. So, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to stick to the paper, help stay on time, but I may vary from that from time to time. I tend to be a storyteller, but if I launch out in that direction, we're going to be here for a while. It'll be a filibuster, I'm afraid. So I'm going to try to stick with the paper. All right, see. The discovery of Helms Deep Cave skeletons offers an extremely rare window into the distant past. It has been an extraordinary privilege to participate in this masterfully organized project, where I've had the honor of conducting skeletal analysis on remains dating back 3,000 years. That's important for a forensic anthropologist, because a lot of our career is spent dealing with remains that died 3 weeks ago. It's so nice to have remains that don't smell bad. There are 3 prehistoric mandatory mortuary regions in the Mid-South, each with different cave burial practices. During the late prehistoric period, 900-1400 AD, in southwest Virginia and adjacent areas, mortuary caves served as repositories for the deceased. Moving southwestward to northern Alabama and adjacent areas, we encounter the Copina culture of the Middle Woodland period, 200 BC to 500 AD. Some Copina people utilize mortuary caves with evidence of elaborate burial practices and finely crafted exotic artifacts. These practices not only reflect their belief about the afterlife, but also the social organization and widespread trade networks. Last is the interior low plateau, spanning central Kentucky and Tennessee, as well as adjacent areas. In terms of mortuary caves, this region, I was supposed to have the next slide.
I'll do it. I can do it for you. If you just tell me when to go forward.
All right.
Are you done with this one?
No.
Okay, good.
The interior low plateau spanning central Kentucky and Tennessee, as well as adjacent areas. In terms of mortuary caves, this region stands out as the most complex and varied. Despite its richness, it remains the most poorly understood of the three Mid-South regions. The caves here represent an array of burial practices and cultural adaptations, challenging archaeologists to unravel their complexities and significance. Next one. The interior low plateau caves serve as repositories for human remains, spanning most of Native American prehistory. While most caves lack skeletons, hundreds, if not thousands, across the regions do contain skeletons. These skeletons predominantly represent intentional interments, usually involving multiple individuals. Can you guys still hear me in the back? All right. Grave goods associated with these interments are rare. The demographic profiles of skeletons, including individuals of various age and both sexes, often differing when compared to terrestrial burials. Alongside deliberate burials, a few caves have evidence of accidental death, such as Mammoth Cave mummy. These skeletons are found in caves of all types: long and short horizontal caves, small caverns near cave entrances, vertical pit caves, as well as deep within the dark zones of complex cave systems. This mortuary practice spans multiple cultural periods, beginning in the late Archaic period, flourishing during the Woodland period, and continuing into the Mississippian period, underscoring the enduring cultural significance of caves across the region's prehistoric timeline. Next slide. Helm's Deep Cave is consistent with other caves in the interior low plateau. It is a long, complex cave, early in temporal sequence with single interments, a uniform demographic, and few, if any, burial goods. Helms offers unique insight into the study of prehistoric human-cave interaction for several reasons. First, when discovered, the skeletons in Helm's Deep Cave were left in place, with only two exceptions. This careful approach preserved the integrity of the archaeological context, allowing more accurate demonstration and interpretation. Secondly, these skeletons have been dated using the carbon from cane torches, providing a chronological framework that enhances our understanding of their temporal context. They are late Archaic, early Woodland, predominantly most of the other cave skeletons in the interior low plateau, predating most of the other cave skeletons in the interior low plateau. Moreover, 6 of the 10 skeletons discovered have been analyzed. We analyzed them in place. This methodological approach not only maintains the integrity of the context, but also allows a detailed examination of the biological and cultural aspects of prehistoric mortuary practices in the region. These skeletons provide a window into late Archaic, early Woodland mortuary caves in the area and illuminate the relationship between people and cave environments in the Mid-South. Next slide. This paper presents the findings of our analysis of 6 skeletal remains. We examined the spatial distribution of the skeletons within the cave and focused on individual 1 and 2, to enhance our understanding of their biological and archaeological context. Individual 1 showed extreme damage and had been removed from its original location. Since no longer in place, we were able to handle and closely examine the bone fragments. This facilitated our insight into the chronological age, sex, and pathology of the skeletons. Conversely, individual 2, which was poorly preserved but remained in place, preventing our physical manipulation of the bones, yet it provided data for bone inventory and body orientation. Our study evaluates hypotheses regarding the deposition of these remains in the cave, including burial practices, lost scenarios, or ritualistic purposes. Furthermore, the paper presents compelling evidence of prehistoric visitors' contact with the remains, which enriches our understanding of ancient social practices and behaviors associated with cave environments. Next slide. A total of 10 skeletons have been discovered, and we examined 6. Most were discovered near to, but not directly adjacent to, the present-day entrance. Most are located toward the southern end of the cave. However, individual 4 was found north of the cave, roughly 1/2 mile from its entrance. Each of these remains represents a single individual skeleton, and all are separated by at least 50 meters from one another. Next slide. Examination of most skeletons was difficult due to their extraordinarily poor preservation. Much of the bones would have crumbled into dust if we had attempted to touch them. The bones from individual 1 showed much breakage, but the pieces were better preserved. Individual 1 is estimated to have been a 30-year-old female, who exhibited well-worn teeth, slight evidence of arthritis, and a small benign tumor in the left ear canal. Individual 2 and the remaining 5 skeletons were examined in place without moving any of the bones. This individual was an adult, but poor preservation prevented reliable estimation of age or sex. No diseases were observed with the individual. Individual 3 was represented mostly by bone dust. A molar crown was consistent with an adolescent or young adult of undetermined sex. No specific pathologies could be discerned with that individual. Individual 4 was fragmentary and moderately preserved. It represented an adolescent or young adult, probably female, and showed no identifiable pathology. Individual 5 presented signs of recent disturbances and poor preservation. These remains belonged to an adult of undetermined sex and no pathology. Individual 6 was fragmentary with only a few identifiable elements. This is an adult of undetermined sex and no pathology. Next slide. Among the 6 skeletons studied, Helms' demographic analysis reveals 4 were adult, 2 adolescent or adult, and no infants or children. 1 was female, 1 was likely female, and the sex of the other 4 could not be determined. The absence of identifiable males does not preclude their presence, nor does it preclude the possibility that the other 4 were all female. We simply don't know. The figure on the right illustrates a typical age and sex distribution based on a large sample demonstrating an equal proportion of sexes and a higher representation of younger individuals compared to older ones. In contrast, Helms skeletons exhibits a non-standard mortuary distribution by sex and age, suggesting selection not typical of prehistoric cemetery samples. Next slide. Body orientation proved interesting. All right, here we go. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. Body orientation proved interesting. 4 individuals were oriented with their heads to the south and feet to the north. Although disturbed, individual 6 apparently had his head to the east. Individual 1 proved too disturbed to determine orientation. No heads were to the north or to the west. Next slide. The diagram of individual 2 shows important features. I'm going to just talk about this, okay? And just,
Go
are
for
they
it.
going to hear me if I walk over here?
Go for it, yes.
Or do I have to stand right here?
There's no mic, you go on.
All right. All right. This is a diagram that I made of the remains of this individual. There was sort of a scatter of a bone meal in this area. I mean, just of dust, of bone, where the bone had decomposed. There's a humerus, an upper arm bone, a right ulna, lower arm bone, left ulna, lower arm bone, and then you get like here, a distal right femur, your thigh bone, head of a femur right here, and then down here you begin to get part of the pelvis, several bones of the pelvis right here, and then tibia, you got the legs and feet down here. And here's north, the head was toward the south, the upper part of the body was toward the south, and the feet were down here. But they were so compact and so together down here. The only way I can explain that is if it was a flexed individual, somebody that was flexed. Next slide. So what I did, I just roughed out roughly where the bones were. Even though these bones were, another thing, they were scattered and they were moved, kind of moved around. Can I go back one slide?
We surely can.
Let's see. So right here, it's almost like someone walked through these, breaking some of them. And if I've got this much of a distal right femur, I should have more of the femur shaft and more of that bone. It's not there. All right, we'll get to that later. All right, next. So roughly, this is what I see. And I see that the individual's legs had to be tightly flexed and bent at the knees, flexed at the hips. And that's how you explain all of these kind of in one group down here where the other bones tend to be scattered above. And what I did with this is just roughly put bones over where these bones were resting underneath them. So you can see that that's kind of how I did that. All right, and next slide. Flex. We looked at the flexed position, and we're looking at mortuary interment versus supernatural, or and then our hopelessly lost person. And got me. It's right because it makes no difference. If this is mortuary interment, maybe they were following practices that they did with terrestrial interments. Usually oval pits, bodies flexed, so maybe that's why the bodies were flexed, legs were flexed. Maybe, but also if it's someone that went into the cave to die, to go to the next life, I could see them assuming a fetal position on the side with the legs flexed. And if I'm lost in a cave, I can guarantee you I'm going to be in a fetal position. So it serves no purpose at all. I couldn't get anything out of whether the legs were flexed or not. It really doesn't make any difference. All right, next slide. All right, which hypothesis is most reasonable? The first one is ceremonial burial, which appears unlikely to us due to the logistical challenges posed by navigating a constricted labyrinth while transporting a corpse. Let me explain that. Let me tell you how I got to that conclusion. My wife told me not to go in that cave. And although I almost always listen to her, I didn't that time. But I thought, what's the problem? That was the second wild cave I'd ever been in. I just happened. And the first one was Jaguar Cave. And what P. Willie, who's gotten me in trouble over the years so many times, P. Willie said, hey, the skeletons, they're pretty near to the entrance, you know, a couple hundred yards. And I'm thinking Jaguar Cave, I'm like, man, I can walk to that. I've been working on papers at a computer for a while. And so I was totally out of shape. I don't know if you noticed, but I am a fat old man, diabetic, high blood pressure, vertigo, thank you. I have a benign positional vertigo. I don't know why they call it benign, but it's not. Benign positional vertigo means if I'm walking like this, hey, I'm pretty good shape. But every now and then, if I'm down on my all fours and have to look up, the whole world starts going like this, and I'm nauseated. Now, all that in mind, we walk down, we get into my first thing is to get to the top to get in this thing, and there's a hole, and somebody said, I just drop in. I said, it's dark in there. I can't see where I'm dropping into. Just turn loose, you'll land. And I'm thinking, how long is it going to take me to land? And so I get in this thing, and I wandered down that, climbing all that rubble down to the bottom, finally go across that stone, like something out of Indiana Jones, and I get into this cave, and before I know it, I'm crawling through this thing, and I think, my wife is right. I'm going to die in here. And then I thought, being a forensic anthropologist, I've seen thousands of autopsies. I thought, if I die in here, how are they going to get me out? And I pretty much concluded they're going to have to take me out a piece at a time, because they can't get this body dragged through that thing. But anyway, if I'm looking at why, and that's one of the things, it's ceremonial burial. I guess if you're really determined, you could go all that distance through all those caves, but I don't see it. So as far as moving the corpse, that's going to possibly be a problem. The lack of infants and children is inconsistent with most cemetery demographic profiles. Manuports consisting of broken plates of stone were found throughout the cave that likely served as trail markers or pathfinders. In addition, one of the unexamined skeletons was surrounded with such stones. These stones may have indicated mortuary or ritualistic behavior. Maybe, but we don't know. The absence of funeral items with individual 2 as well as the other individuals further suggests a departure from some typical prehistoric burial practice, but is quite typical of Mid-South burial caves. The other one, the hopelessly lost hypothesis, also seems unlikely. It's important that all 10 individuals, it's hard for me to believe that all 10 individuals died because they were lost in the cave. With all that stuff, that manuports that were set up and everything.
It's like, to me, as somebody who's seen miles and miles of that cave, as someone who surveyed it, over the course of 5,000 years, like.
We can't hear you.
Hang on, at the end.
Okay, yeah.
We're going to get on.
Okay, hold on for your questions.
All right, the other, as far as rite of passage, hypothesis seems the most reasonable of the 3. The lack of associated artifacts could support the idea that these individuals entered the cave for ritualistic reasons, perhaps with little or no clothing, rather than being placed there with the usual artifacts and everything. And so it doesn't look like a burial. It doesn't seem what you'd see in a burial ritual. It's more of a burial practice. And again, the corpse transport problem. Age and possible sex patterns differ from cemetery profiles, and there's ethnographic studies cited in a 2012 paper by Crothers suggests that early woodland period caves may have served as significant settings for male rites of passage. So, right or wrong, that's where we're putting our money. All right, data on
Next slide.
is it? Hang on. Is it next slide? Not yet.
Okay, good.
Data on body orientation
Don't look at me when you say that.
Based on body orientation for the unexamined skeletons and more reliable sex and chronological age of all skeletons might provide additional support for the rite of passage hypothesis if these things can be determined. Orientation, if intentional, would have been a remarkable achievement considering the absence of natural light and the numerous directional changes the cave's passages take. Floyd Collins, one of the most famous cavers of the 20th century, actually felt that he possessed the ability to identify cardinal directions in a cave. And as I understand it, he and a friend were in a cave one time and decided to test it. And so he tested it at several different places, and at each place he failed miserably. All right. So, if cardinal orientation with the Helms cave skeletons, if that could be demonstrated, it would open a new study into human sensory adaptability. Cavers, if there's anybody on the planet, I would think, that would have a good sense of direction, it'd be you guys. I'm serious. What I would suggest, try this. All of you. Next time you're in a cave, just take some time and sit there in the dark silence of the cave and go north. And then get your compass out and see that. And if you can do that 3 or 4 times in a row and hit it, give me a call. Not only that, I think if you can do it 2 or 3 times in a row, it's not just me that want to hear about it. I think at that point in time, you will become an international specimen. People will want to study you. But it would be interesting if anybody can do that. And if it's doable, then we can go back and look at orientation on the scale.
That's right.
All right. Next slide. Sometimes, especially in forensic work, it's not just what you see, it's what you don't see. It's not the presence of something, but the absence of something that's more meaningful. A close examination of individual 2 shows the skeleton, the skull of this individual is missing. Next slide. All right. Individual 2's fine bone dust suggests complete disintegration of many of the bones over time, and scattered bone fragments from most parts of the skeleton are visible, including those of the arms, hands, pelvis, legs, and feet. This indicates that most of the postcranial skeleton was represented but had been disturbed prehistorically. Although many bones from the postcranial skeleton are present, there is an absence of all cranial bones. There is no cranium, no mandible, and no teeth. Some of the densest skeletal elements are found in the mandible and the temporal bones, the bones that hold the tiny bones of the ear. Super dense, and they tend to last, and the part of the mandible down here will last when everything else is gone. But those elements were missing. Additionally, tooth enamel represents the hardest, densest material in the skeleton and tends to persist after all other bone has decomposed. This was not there. The skull was missing. All right. The absence of these durable skeletal elements is evident that the skull was removed prior to the recent discovery of individual 2. The postcranial bones are broken, and the ends of many are also missing. The bone pieces present are scattered, indicating some force displaced them from their original anatomical alignment. All right, next slide. First, the absence of the skull with damaged and scattered postcranial bones taken collectively suggests that prehistoric cavers disturbed the remains after individual 2 decomposed. In their actions, bones were broken and scattered, and the skull, along with the select postcranial bones and possibly associated artifacts, were taken as trophies or keepsakes. The presence of charcoal remnants among the bones may have fallen as the visitors held cane torches close to pillage their find. Next slide. Individual 1, and this is important. Individual 1 was characterized by damaged and fragmented dry bones with fractured surfaces indicating that most were altered during prehistoric times. Within forensic anthropology, my specialty has been bone trauma and bone fractures for years, and you can look at how bones bend and so forth. I was asked to be on a Smithsonian team to examine Kennewick Man, and they wanted me to look at the bone fractures. So I've seen a lot of fractured surfaces, whether recent, occurring at the time of the death, or something that occurred long after death. Most of what I see with these fragments we're looking at were stained surfaces. This was not recent breakage where modern day cavers had gone in. This is something from the past. All right, next. Basically, on that last slide, what I was.
I'll go back one.
All right. What I'm saying is, individual 1's in the way of people going in and out of that cave, and it's close to most. Wherever you're going to the cave, I think you're going through the Jeffrey Marine.
Yep.
And so, any of these prehistoric groups that went through, there was a skeleton there. And the more they went over it and back and forth, the more they broke this skeleton up. So that's prehistoric. And then modern cavers moved it out of place to protect it. So it was one of the skeletons that had been moved from its original place. All right, next. Years or possibly centuries after individual 1's death, maps said that prehistoric cavers. All right. Years after the death, the prehistoric cavers went over number 1, and to get into number 2, they're inspecting number 2 skeleton, and may have accidentally dropped some of their cane torch as it burned into the skeleton as they examined it. And at some point, it appears that visitors trampled the remains of individual 2. So not just individual 1, maybe by accident or they just needed to get by there and didn't worry about it. But individual 2 could have been by accident, but they were taking the skull. It's gone. And and some of the ends of some of the other bones, like that femur, I got, at one end of it, I don't have the shaft, which is some of the densest part of the femur. It's not there. So really, really kind of interesting. All right, next slide. All right, so when did the 10 individuals use the cave? I don't know when the 10 individuals used the cave, but if you look at this as possibly 4 activity periods, they didn't use it during this period. The reason I know that is number 1 skeleton had been walked over and someone had done stuff to it. If this, and again, here's the assumption that these are the dates, and there may be other dates, but if these are the only dates, it had to be earlier than this one, because the only people after that one are the modern day cavers that came through. Someone came through and walked over it, so it could have been here, and people from here walked over. It could have been here, you got this group, and this group that walked over, breaking up number 1 to get back there. All right. I don't want to blame anyone of them for taking the skull. Just saying. All right. Next. In summary, 10 late archaic, early woodland human remains were discovered in Helm's Deep Cave, primarily near the entrance and spaced at least 50 meters apart. Our observations support rite of passage or ritual rather than mortuary practice or hopelessly lost as the most likely reason they were in the cave. Also, Assuming the C14 dates represent the only active periods in the cave, then the 10 individuals probably used the cave prior to 1200 BC. Next slide. This discovery provides invaluable insight into how prehistoric cultures utilized caves for mortuary ritual and its sacred places. Archaeologists and historians are incredibly fortunate to have the support of the landowner, Jonathan Coburn, who recognized the importance of Helm's Deep Cave. His commitment to preserving this site has been pivotal in ensuring that these discoveries are studied and appreciated now and for generations to come. In addition to landowners' stewardship of the cave, the dedicated efforts of the caver community, I didn't know what else to call you guys, but caver community, has played a crucial role in mapping, preservation, and the ongoing research at Helm's Deep Cave. In conclusion, the discovery of these archaeological skeletons not only enriches our knowledge of the past, but also underscores the importance of safeguarding our cultural heritage. Next slide. And so, acknowledgements. All right, one thing I will say, Jonathan, I wouldn't be, not just here, I probably wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for Jonathan.
You'd still be in the cave.
I would
You'd
still
be
be
one of those skeletons in there.
in pieces coming out, but anyway, by the time we did all this, and I was terribly out of shape before I went in there. I thought I was gonna be walking, like here, walking.
Did you
Not.
have a cracked rib on that trip?
Yes.
Yeah, tell me about your rib, man.
Yeah, the week prior to going into the cave, I fractured a rib. It was a ATV accident. Oh no. My wife's laughing about the ATV accident. What really happened, we have a farm and I was picking blackberries on the ATV and I saw one down there and I kind of lunged off of it to get it and I heard a snap. So the ATV accident was me trying to pick a blackberry. And anyway, what I'm gonna say about Jonathan, I got in and out, my legs, by the time I was coming back out of that cave, were totally noodles. They were gone. And we get to this, now I'm out, except I gotta climb this waterfall of boulders to get to the top, to squeeze through this hole up at the top. And I'm going to, and thank you, it's tremendous help, he was so nice, and he was, but what I noticed as we were going up, Jonathan would say, he'd get on this thing, he said, he just put your knee on this one. I'm 5'8". His knees are that much higher than mine. And it was rough getting up there, but thank you. And great work with all this. All you guys, y'all did great on this. All right, questions?
There's one up here in front.
Right here, all right.
So I guess I'm like confused of why this kind of like dismissal of the fact that like them being lost, because as somebody who's spent a lot of time mapping in there, it's like you blink and you're lost if we don't pay the service stations.
Her question is,
And also,
why were they not lost?
No.
And also,
But also, additionally to that, you even say yourself, like when we found most of these, there hasn't been charcoal associated with them, so like they've run out of cane torch. They weren't like taken out there, so like I guess I'm confused why that's a dismissal of them kind of just being curious human beings and, wandering off, because we know that lots of people went in there.
no cane torches with all of them. So the question is,
Just like why dismiss kind of the
I
like.
tell you, the last thing, if I'm lost, the last thing I'm gonna turn loose of is my cane torch. Till it goes out and I'm on the ground with
Well,
me
that's
and
the
my
thing, is
cane
there-
torch in the fetal position.
But
The question is, what she's asking is, why couldn't it be represent a lost individual? My response to that, it could be one of these. Maybe number one was a lost individual.
I mean, for like a lot of them,
There was,
just given.
but I can't believe all 10 of these people,
Why not?
when they were putting these manuports up, blocking entrances, that all 10 of them were lost in the cave. I
Well,
just
we
can't.
tend to find a lot of them beyond where Karens are,
Alright.
and like they would have days and days to starve to death.
No,
Okay, we do have another presentation, but let's just do a couple more questions. Julianne?
Is there any prospect of human sacrifice to explain why these people are where they're at?
Human sacrifice. Now, look, the ritual thing we were talking about,
We can't answer.
if it was their idea, okay, but maybe it's somebody else's idea and they just got, their number was up, and so you're the one going in the cave. I don't know, I can't say that. All right, yes, sir.
Isn't there some possibility, after all that time, that the remains were disturbed by animals?
By animals?
We have yet to find animal tracks or anything
About
inside the
mama or
cave,
something.
with the exception of a modern dog skull with a radio collar that was
Yeah,
like.
I saw that one. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
where the
know.
coon
What we
is
do?
somewhere.
All
You
right,
make
so,
the calls.
just one or two more really quick. Yes, sir, Buford?
Smith had his hand
Does
up.
rite of passage include a dying individual
Of course.
purposely walking in there on
Yeah.
their own?
Yeah, that's a passage to the other world.
Yeah.
So it could be and George Carruthers has suggested that, the Japanese, the old woman goes up the mountain and doesn't come down. So these are all possibilities. There are many, many possibilities.
What
The
he
work
said.
is still very preliminary. So yes, sir, you have a question?
Having been hopelessly lost in a cave 26 hours ago.
Yeah.
And with a fancy headlight, not a flickering cane torch, that's going to go out after.
So getting lost is possible?
More than possible.
Yeah.
In Amazing Cave, it was much smaller, much
What
smaller
cave
than
was it?
this one. So.
What cave was
I
it?
think that's a very good possibility. And 10 could be some of his bros went looking for him after he came out. Didn't
We-
come back. And over a period of time, hundreds of years, they're gonna forget the story that's been told about not going in the cave because you get lost. They're gonna go in and explore, and again, in Amazing Cave, I think that's gonna be a problem.
There are a lot of
The
possibilities.
ten didn't have artifacts with them, all
Yeah,
they
yeah. Well, they don't have anything with them. It's really weird. You would expect, even, the one in Mammoth, the one in Salt, they have some artifacts with them.
Are those preserved well, given like the state of how badly the bones are like decayed? Like, should we be seeing
Probably,
clothing?
we should be.
Stone certainly would.
Yeah.
Metal.
Yeah.
Also, I'd like to thank my trip leader again for sending the.
What cave were you in that you were lost? What cave were you lost in?
Cemetery pit?
Yeah. Yeah, you can get lost in caves. We know that. Jim Smith.
I just want to say I was involved in finding skeleton number 10 with the team, survey team I was.
So what you need to do is to talk to Dr.
That's
Berryman.
who I'm talking to.
Great, go for it.
A single set of footprints going out to the gravesite and, or where the person finally passed away. And we lost the charcoal quite a ways before we got to it. We found it by another direction, like we surveyed.
So you had a single
We
set
were
of footprints
completely-
going in, charcoal lost along the
Yeah,
way,
we were a
dead
completely
guy out
virgin
front.
passage when we found it, and then we saw where the individual had come in, just a single set. And it just, it was just articulated. I don't think we found a skull or anything, but, no artifacts, anything.
Was that the Lost Hobbit area?
Those,
That was number 10, is out in the east.
Oh, in the east. Okay, I was thinking Lost Hobbit was someone else. Mike?
Quick question, with at least some of the skeletons, I know there appear to be surviving digestive remains associated with the bones, and what might we learn from those?
if you have
Or maybe Joe can involved.
Yeah, so one very unusual feature of the cave, of course, the soil chemistry needs to be looked at, the mineralogy needs to be looked at, but on some of the specimens, there are what appears to be the remains of what had been intestinal material inside the area of the footprint of the bones. So obviously to do any work on that, it's going to require jumping through a lot of hoops. But yes, you could get diet information. I mean, there's all sorts of information you could have. There's also our paleofeces in the cave that are not associated with human remains, which may be an easier way to get into those same questions. Other questions for Dr. Berryman? Paula?
Can I ask one thing? What is the correlation between the date of the footprints, the bodies, and the charcoal?
We don't know.
Do
I mean,
they-
we think they're all within this 400-year period, but it's hard to tell which came first. I mean, based on Hugh's work, it seems like maybe some of the bones were there pretty early on, and then people were coming in later, right?